Okay, we are going live now. Yes, we are live. So we can get started then, Shada. Over to you.
Okay. So, hello, Dr. Jignesh, Praise, Nicole Pereira, and Snehal, and all the attendees out there. A very good evening to one and all. On behalf of Blue Circle Diabetes Foundation, I extend a warm welcome to for all the attendees over here to the interesting topic we are going to discuss over here. The event will be hosted by myself, Sharda Gurram, pharmacy professional and living with type 2 diabetes since 5 years, and Snehal, my co-host. As it is rightly said, better information, better health. So let us start today's most inquisitive and curious topic for all the diabetics out there. I'm sure all the diabetics would be interested to be educated about the safety, adverse events, and the cautions of the diabetic pills they are gulping and pinching themselves day and night for the better care of yourself and your near and dear ones. Me and Snehal today are going to dive through a very interesting topic, patient safety and pharmacovigilance in diabetes. So, know your medicines to know your diabetes with our speakers, Dr. Jignesh Trail, Therapy Area Lead, Medical Affairs from Boehringer Ingelheim India, and Nicole Pereira, Patient Safety Executive from Boehringer Ingelheim. So today in our today's event, we will be discussing what exactly is pharmacovigilance, what are the general queries people have while consuming their medicines, and how you can ensure safety while you are on the treatment. So do watch us till the end. Before we get started, may I ask Neil and other speakers to shortly introduce themselves?
Yes, yes. So, hi everyone. Those of who you don't know me, I am Snehal, and I live with type 1 diabetes since the last 21 years. And I'm here today to yet another Blue Circle workshop. And today we have a very, very interesting topic, like Sharda introduced. And I know Sharda is from a PhD, like she's doing PhD in pharmacy, and she has a background in that. But for layman like us and majority of the audience who's here, I think it's a very innovative and a new word, pharmacovigilance. Like I, for one, had no idea what that means. So we will quickly get started, jump into the session, and I would like to ask our guests today. Like, let's start with the most basic question. Like, what is pharmacovigilance? Like, if you have to explain to our audience, I think that would be the first question.
Okay. Hi everyone. Hi Sharda. Thanks for the warm welcome and a big hello to the entire Blue Circle family. And thanks for joining. I hope that after this session, like Snehal has this doubt about what is pharmacovigilance. I hope we can shed some little light about it and help you all to gain some insights about it. So starting with what is pharmacovigilance and its impact in patient safety. So I think COVID has made us all aware about the term clinical trials. So a drug is basically subjected to an entire, test, a lot of tests, and then it is, approved, and then it is available in the market to all. So pharmacovigilance basically starts when once the drug is in the market and it is available to an entire set of population. In clinical trials, it's a very controlled environment, but when the drug is available to all, we get data from a lot of sets of population who were not included in a clinical trial. Like most of the times, elderly patients, children, pregnant women, they are excluded from the clinical trial. So when it is available in the market, we get data from all these sets as well. Uh, when what we do of that data is we analyze, and the main thing is that we check the safety profile of that drug. Okay, the reason why that drug is in the market is because the benefit of that drug outweighs the risk of that drug. And I think a lot of these diabetic patients will be wondering that how is it helping us, what is this pharmacovigilance and how does it help us. So I'm going to share one experience from my
Yeah.
own life. So my grandparents are both diabetics, and I'll just tell you one very quick instance with my grandmom. So we went visiting her, and she's a diabetic for I think a good couple of years now. Along with that, she's got a lot of other health issues. So she was just we were just having a very candid chat, and she was telling us that I've got this little bit tummy upset. and it's been troubling me for a good number of weeks. So I had asked my mom that, did she tell you this? So she said, no, it's okay. I've popped another tablet which helps my tummy upset. So I said, but that does not solve the issue. So she said, no, I've not told my doctor because, I'm taking so many pills. Being elderly patients, we are consuming more than one drug, right, per day. So she said,
Mm.
I don't know which one it is, but I'm guessing I've taken this one, and soon after that, I experienced this tummy upset. So I told my mom, the next time you visit the doctor with my grandmom, please tell him and bring this to his attention that, she's facing so and so trouble with the medication. So the doctor told her that, I've got these few complaints from the patients as well, but what we'll do at the onset is just reduce the dose and see if this problem still persists. So she reduced the dose, but that tummy upset did not clear. The next time they went to the doctor, he stopped the medication and put her on to another medication. And soon after that, that problem completely vanished. So I had got a chance to tell her that, see, your doctor is not going to get some, a dream that XYZ patient is going to experience this side effect. So it is your responsibility as a patient or your family member to go and bring it to the notice of the doctor. Most of the times our population has this thing ki if we got a thing, then let's just pop another pill, or if so doctor badli karenge, कि how can he have given me this medication in
Mm.
the first place that I got this side effect. So these are like these few misconceptions which I hope during this session I'm able to touch upon these and clear these misconceptions. So this is like a slight insight about what is patient safety and pharmacovigilance.
I think thank you for sharing that example, Nicole. And I think every one of us in our lifetime of taking medications and visiting doctors, we have gone through this thing, and all the time we just say like let's change the medicine on our own, or like let's Google something rather than trying to understand what is causing that side effect and checking with your doctor. And like you said, like the easiest solution is to change the doctor, like just go and like maybe he'll give us something better, but I think that's what sets the essence of this topic. Like pharmacovigilance is more of understanding what medication you're taking, if it is having any side effect on your body or not, and how you as a person and you can work with your doctor to understand what particular molecule or what particular ingredient in your medication is causing you that side effect, so yeah, I'm pretty excited, and I'm sure our audience is also very excited on this topic. So I think we'll start with our first question, and we'll get directly on to like relating pharmacovigilance with diabetes, basically. The most common medication that people living with type 2 diabetes take is metformin, and which is considered to be the safest drugs of all, but does it have any adverse effects? Because many people, they do experience side effects like bloating or like maybe nausea or something like that. So, are there any side effects of the drug metformin that people living with type 2 diabetes usually take? And if there is any problem, how we can rectify that?
Yeah, thank you, Snehal, and thank you to the Blue Circle team for having us on this wonderful discussion. It's a very relatable topic, and when we are talking of the relevance of pharmacovigilance, uh, I was trying to correlate this with the third law of Newton. Many of my relatives also, they, whenever we think of taking a medicine for any condition, they would think that it is a problem. For every action, there should be an equal and opposite reaction, and the medicine will have some kind of reaction on the body. But rational pharmacotherapeutics is a little toned down version of it, wherein the benefits outweigh the risk, as Nicole mentioned, and that's why the medicines are prescribed by the doctors for the individual patients. Um, in particularly in diabetes and also at large, pharmacotherapeutics works on the principles of individualization of care, wherein for every individual patient, the priorities may be different, and thus the prescription would be individualized by the doctor for the respective patient. I think that's one very important principle as we discuss about pharmacovigilance.
Correct.
And yeah, again, it is also It's like when you want to do something, there is a problem in the body and you want to correct it. So if you have to do something, you need to make some kind of adjustments. Very simple example is like the festive celebrations. अभी ये गणपति का सीजन है, ईद का सीजन है, and we all want to celebrate. We want these celebrations to happen, but at the same time, we need to make adjustments for the traffic. So the important part is to know that when something like this is happening, हमें क्या adjustments करनी है. I think that's the entire crux of pharmacovigilance. And in that context, when we talk of drugs for type 2 diabetes like metformin, the most often prescribed drug for type 2 diabetes, most relevant one. Yes, metformin does have its own share of side effects, and a lot of patients develop gastrointestinal upset with metformin, particularly in the initial couple of weeks. They suffer from diarrhea, nausea, vomiting occasionally, and this occurs in nearly half of the patients. In fact, diarrhea is quite a common adverse reaction of metformin, but it settles down over a couple of weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, it settles down on its
Okay.
own. So, that is one important understanding. And this happens because metformin acts a lot through the gut. A huge proportion of the action of metformin is mediated by the gut, the intestines, and the gut. Now, the other aspects here is it is very important for us to convey to our doctors कि ये problems हो रहे हैं and over a couple of weeks ये कैसे resolve हो रहे हैं, problems resolve हो रहे हैं कि नहीं या बढ़ रहे हैं. So the doctor can make appropriate changes to the dose of metformin. That is also important. Titrating the dose of metformin based on each patient's tolerability is an important aspect. So ये डॉक्टर को कन्वे करना बताना बहुत ज़रूरी है कि ये सिम्टम्स अभी भी परसिस्ट हो रहे हैं. One thing is the patient should not worry in the initial couple of weeks because metformin बहुत अच्छे से काम करती है डायबिटीज़ कंट्रोल करने में, और ये साइड इफ़ेक्ट्स काफ़ी कॉमन है बट सीरियस नहीं है. दीज आर माइनर, माइल्ड टू मॉडरेट साइड इफ़ेक्ट्स इन नेचर. इससे इतना नुकसान नहीं होगा, पेशेंट को फ़ायदा ही होगा. But at the same time, it's also important to convey the convey how things are evolving over the next few weeks with the doctors regularly.
Mhm. So basically, with metformin, the normal side effects that you usually face are maybe gastrointestinal issues, diarrhea, or bloating. And Devna in the comments has said that one of the side effects she faced was weight loss, which was very welcome. So, yeah. So, like you said, like we always have to weigh the pros and cons of taking the medication. And जैसे डॉक्टर जिग्नेश ने कहा कि अगर आप आपके डॉक्टर को बताएंगे नहीं तो उनको पता नहीं चलेगा. तो and there are a lot of different drugs which are available in the market. It's not just one class of drugs that the patient is supposed to take. जस्ट अगर आप टाइप 2 डायबिटीज के साथ जी रहे हैं तो हम सिर्फ मेटफॉर्मिन का नाम सुनते हैं, बराबर. So it's very, like Dr. Jignesh rightly said, that talk to your doctor if you're facing any sort of side effects or all of the symptoms that we just talked about, and maybe they can reduce the dosage or shift you to another class of medicines. So I think we have Sharda back on now. Sharda, would you like to take
Yeah,
the
sorry for the Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah?
So, my next question to you, doctor, is how safe are the insulin injectors? So, we have many analogs available in the market. So, are there any adverse events reported or faced by the people around, I mean, the patients using these injections?
Yes, yes. So, see, insulin again. Insulin is a very strong intervention. Okay, so of course it depends on the dose of insulin required for every patient, but and particularly in type 2 diabetes, what we generally do is we delay the use of insulin with the use of orally available anti-diabetic drugs as much as possible. But then there is a time when the oral drugs are not enough, and you would require replacement of endogenous insulin. बॉडी का अपना इंसुलिन सिक्रीशन कम हो जाता है over a period of time when the diabetes progresses, and that's where the patients require exogenous insulin to be taken. Because insulins can be very strong, they can cause hypoglycemia. They can reduce the blood sugar levels
Yeah.
drastically, and that's where titration of insulin dose for not only every individual patient's requirement, but also for general conditions. Like if the patient is expected to go on a diet, then probably the dose of insulin should be lower. Or if the patient is going to carry out import, some physical activity, or there is some kind of stress, then the dose of insulin also requires titration in those conditions. Um, Hypoglycemia is a severe grade of hypoglycemia occurs in about 1 to 2% of patients in a year. So severe hypoglycemia is not that common, but definitely it can occur in any individual depending on if depending on the circumstances. You do not If you have taken a good dose of insulin and if you have not consumed the meal on that day, then that can be a problem. So these situations and managing the patient's self-care when the patient is on insulin therapy is a very important aspect to avoid these kind of adverse reactions. Insulin also causes weight gain. Insulin is an anabolic hormone, so it causes
Okay.
uh, bit of weight gain that is there, and injection site reactions can also happen. That's why it is also recommended that every injection needs to be taken at a different site, slightly different, not exactly on the same site, to avoid those injection site reactions. um, Alcohol, if there is excessive alcohol consumption along with insulin, then that can cause that predisposes to hypoglycemia very significantly, so that should be avoided. Alcohol in diabetes, anyhow, there are lots of problems with alcohol, but if at all, um, it should be consumed in moderation, not excessive drinking.
Okay.
Yeah,
So we
these.
do have a question on alcohol. We'll come to
Yeah.
that later.
Okay,
But
sure.
other than that, Dr.
Yeah,
Jit,
which is
like what you said, I think me and Sharda, since we are living with type 1, we understand that hyper and hypo are very, like, they are a part of our lives because we take insulin multiple times a day.
Hmm.
But the general mentality, specifically of Indian population, towards insulin is very negative. Like even at the diagnosis of type 1, we usually see that parents are very scared. They are like, "Iska to bahut side effect hoga. Ye addictive hai kya?" So we hear a lot of these questions. So other than these side effects that we talked about, is hyperglycemia, site rotation that can lead to lipohypertrophy, and and weight gain. Like insulin is an hormone that can lead to weight gain. But other than that, like as a doctor's perspective, we would want to hear, other than all of these things, are there any other side effects of taking insulin for long term? Because I've been type 1 since 21 years, so it's been 21 years of every day taking multiple injections. And I personally have never seen anything else other than what we just talked about. So just for our larger audience, because we
Yes.
trust our doctors a lot, so we would to hear it from you. Like, are there any other side effects of taking insulin injections?
Yeah. So I think that's the point that you mentioned is very important. The phobia of insulin, fear of
yeah,
insulin
the
itself.
stigma.
That's a big
It is the
barrier, and
stigma.
you have seen many patients who, just because of their fear, they remain uncontrolled with high glucose levels, and that causes a lot of problems in the long run. Uh, One thing we all must understand is insulin is one hormone which balances out 4 to 5 different hormones in the body. Okay, whenever you have stress, hormones like epinephrine, norepinephrine, steroids, these are released. Thyroid hormone, growth hormone, glucagon, these are all anti-insulin hormones which are catabolic in nature. And insulin is one hormone which balances out all these processes of the body, all these biological processes, vis-a-vis all these anti-insulin hormones. So if there is a problem and the patient is not able to secrete enough insulin, it needs to be replenished. There is no other choice. Okay, you can delay the use of insulin uh, by the medicines, and these medicines would help improve the action of insulin in the body. Some of these medicines increase the secretion of insulin from the beta cells of pancreas. The other medicines help to improve the sensitivity of insulin in the muscles and peripheral tissues. But eventually, it is all about having that effective action of insulin in the body, which is essential for life. There is no option there, and at some point, If the patient requires insulin and if it is not administered, then that can cause very serious problems. The solution is very simple: use insulin, use it wisely, and as Snehal you mentioned, you have a huge long experience of using insulin, and it's about, see, once insulin becomes a part of life, once we are using it regularly, then we would know how to manage it ourselves. We would not require all those charts and scales to um, think about the doses that need to be administered. We would be in a state of balance mentally. We are in a state of balance as to what is my requirement. I would know that very well. If I'm regularly on insulin, I would know that myself. Yeah, these the adverse reactions that we talked about. Hypoglycemia, of course, if insulin is used wisely, then that can be minimized. Weight gain is modest, and again, in diabetes, of course, lifestyle management is very important, which can also help address the weight gain issue. Sometimes, along with some of the medicines, if the patient has a predisposition to heart failure, okay, when there is significant cardiovascular disease, then insulin might also increase the predisposition to heart failure. But I mean, see, then we are talking of heart failure, which is a very advanced complication. The patient already has damage in the heart, and the patient would already be on treatment for heart failure, which would take care of this problem. So yes, if there is a requirement for insulin, then the very clear message would be that it should not be delayed, and that barrier should be overcome. It's an essential aspect of life, and that we all must recognize and appreciate.
Right, right, sure. And adding to what you just said, Sharda, you're on mute. Sharda, would you like to take that question on diabetes and comorbidities? Yeah.
Yeah. So many of the patients who are living with type 2 diabetes, they also come with different comorbidities like cardiovascular diseases or renal problems and etc. etc. So they tend to use many drugs, like even in the geriatric patients, the older patients. So in such cases, there will be like multiple drugs going into the body. Are there any interactions happening, or does the patient need to be cautioned to take any of the medicine while they are administering? So, and do the pharmacist or the doctors need to advise them which two medicines need not be taken together? Can you throw some light on that?
Yes, yes. Now, you see, this is a very important question because often patients with diabetes, individuals with diabetes, would have some kind of comorbidity, at least in the long term. And with comorbidity, you have a situation of taking multiple medicines. Um, the response to this question cannot be generalizable. Again, as I mentioned, we need to follow the principles of individualization for every patient. Like, say, if a patient's serum potassium levels are borderline, then the patient would not be able to take certain medicines. But if the potassium levels are manageable, then use of couple of medicines which might slightly increase potassium levels, that is also permissible. So individualization is the key here. But in general,
Okay.
a few things that can be followed as general principles. One is the sick day rule. Okay, sick day rule. What do we mean by that? See, whenever there is a situation of significant stress to the body, like acute medical or surgical illness, okay, and we are talking of severe illness which requires staying at home for a 2 to 3 days with high grade fever, etc., etc. Or if the patient undergoes long term fasting, say in a season, the patient goes on a fasting for 3 to 4 days, wherein starvation is possible. So, in these kind of situations, we must temporarily discontinue a few medicines, and quite a few diabetes medicines come here, including metformin, sulfonylureas, SGLT2 inhibitors, GLP-1 receptor agonists. These medicines should be temporarily stopped. The important thing is when this situation of stress is overcome, these medicines must be reinitiated. Often, when the medicines are stopped, the reinitiation it doesn't happen with a lot of discipline, and that's where we if the sick day rule is followed, sometimes the damage may be more than the benefit. So reinitiation needs also to be meticulously done once the situation is overcome. Certain drugs, of course, we discussed about hypoglycemia, which is possible with insulin or medicines which increase the insulin secretion in the body, like sulfonylureas. These medicines can cause hypoglycemia by themselves or in combination with any other glucose lowering therapy. A very commonly used medicine in cardiovascular disease is beta blocker. Beta blockers are used for hypertension, for patients with heart attack or coronary artery disease, and also in heart failure. These are the standard drugs. And beta blockers actually um, they block the activity of our sympathetic nervous system through the beta receptor inhibition. Now, when sympathetic activity is blocked, if the patient does have a hypoglycemic event, the patient may not able to sense that hypoglycemia, because what happens in hypoglycemia, जब blood sugar level कम हो जाती है तो ऐसा ट्रेमर्स आते हैं, चक्कर आते हैं, ये सारे सिम्टम्स
Yes,
अगर
yes.
पेशेंट बीटा ब्लॉकर ले रहा है तो वो सिम्टम्स फील नहीं हो पाते, स्वेटिंग और ये सब नहीं होता, पेशेंट को पता नहीं चलता कि हाइपोग्लाइसेमिया हुआ. So that's why it is advisable to avoid beta blockers if patients have diabetes and if the cardiovascular condition can be taken care of by other medicines. Uh, the other aspect is the dose adjustments that are required when the patients have advanced kidney disease or liver dysfunction. Because ये सारे जो मेडिसिन जिनकी हम बात कर रहे हैं, ये सबका बॉडी से एलिमिनेशन बाहर निकलना इधर किडनी से होता है थ्रू द यूरिन और थ्रू द लीवर. सो इफ देयर इज अ प्रॉब्लम, अगर पेशेंट को एडवांस किडनी डिसीज हो गया तो ये मेडिसिन बॉडी के बाहर नहीं निकल पाते और वो बॉडी में जमा होने लगते हैं, और जब मेडिसिन जमा होने लगते हैं तब उनका साइड इफेक्ट हो सकता है. So
Okay.
not all medicines, but some medicines that those needs to be titrated according to the kidney function. Those adjustments जरूरी हो जाता है. And in advanced kidney disease, some medicines need to be stopped, but others can be continued. So कौन से medicines kidney disease या liver disease में यूज हो सकते हैं safely, ये आपके डॉक्टर आपको जानकारी दे सकते
But
हैं.
thank
Okay.
you, Dr. Jignesh. I
Yeah.
think what you said is the concept of individualization of medication, and I think in Indian society it's a little lost, because we usually talk to our neighbors, we talk to our friends, and then we listen to what dose they are taking or what medication they are taking, and we just jump onto that bandwagon and hum bhi wahi le lete hain without checking in with our doctors. So I think that is very important reminder for every one of us, that check with your doctor once, especially for the medication that you're
Okay.
taking. And I think one of the things that we
Yes.
as patients with diabetes, we are told that steroids also affect our blood sugars. They lead to increase in the blood sugars. So I usually check with my doctor if any medication that he is giving is having steroids or not. And if they have, then I always ask them to stop. But then it's always important that we have to be informed patients as well. Because it's important to tell your doctor that you're living with diabetes. Otherwise, how is he going to help you with that? And especially a common question that we see with mothers of kids live with type 1 diabetes is the cough syrups that you usually get in the market. Like they have a higher quantity of sugars in that. So you always have to check that it's sugar free. That is one thing. And I think even for the kidneys that you talked about, because I recently had a very bad ear infection, and I went to see my ENT, and then he was very reluctant to give me this very powerful painkillers, saying that they can have impact on the kidneys. So it's very important to check it with your doctor, like if your medication has sugar in it, if it has steroids in it, or if it can impact, like painkillers can impact your kidney functioning or not. So I think that was a great reminder for all of us to like always check in with your doctor and recheck your
Yes.
symptoms or side
So,
effects that you're having. And I think I will
yeah,
move on to the
basically the
next
idea of this question,
Yeah, yeah. Sharda, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, basically the idea of this question was to make the audience aware to whenever you are taking any medicines, you check with your doctors. Okay. this is your medicine and what are the other medicines and what could be the interactions and what side effects you may fall into. So the awareness has to be created among the people, and that is why we are here to educate the people. So the next question, Snehal, you are taking.
Yeah. I was just going to ask Nicole on coming back to the reporting part of side effects. So we touched base on, we talk to our doctors, we tell our doctors that these are the side effects that as a patient I am feeling. But what are the further steps? Like, can I report it to the authorities, and how do I go about that?
Okay, so first I'll just touch upon a little bit of misconceptions people have, or notions people have about reporting adverse events. So one is that a lot of people find it very time consuming. Second, it is that I only report serious adverse events, like something which is life threatening or which has caused me to be hospitalized. ऐसा. But that is not the case. Non-serious side effects, as simple as a headache or dizziness, when you've consumed your product and you've encountered that, that is also supposed to be reported. So equal importance to non-serious side effects as well should be given. Another thing is that if I complain, तो मेरा doctor offend हो जाएगा कि he is giving me this product, I've got a side effect and now I'm reporting that. Another thing could also be कि legal implications क्या है, like if I complain then will the pharma company have a ऐसे court कचेरी का case no one wants to get involved in, and so there is a little bit of a resistance to report a side effect. So these are just misconceptions. Now coming to the various channels of reporting. So the first step was to tell your doctor who has prescribed your medicine, this is the side effect I've encountered, and he will help you to overcome that problem. वो तो solution बताएगा. The next step, if you feel that your concern has not been addressed, is to directly contact the pharma company. Just say in our organization, we have a special contact tab which has a PV desk, which has a number and an email address where the patient or the family member can write to. What is that they have experienced. I will come to that what is required to be reported in some time, but they can directly contact the pharma company as well. And the next step, in case they want to escalate the issue, if they still feel that their concern has not been addressed, is that they can directly approach the health authority. India has taken pharmacovigilance very seriously in these past few years, and they've come out with different ways for people to report adverse events easily. So there is something called as the Pharmacovigilance Program of India, PVPI, and on their website if you go, you will see two sets of forms. One is for the doctor to report an adverse event, and one is specially for the patients. And if people like the patients have a problem with English, so there is languages, there are 10 different languages the forms are written in, from Bengali to Gujarati to Hindi, all the possible regional languages, just to make reporting easier for the patient. In case they do not want to fill in the form, there is a helpline number available out there, which is a 24/7 helpline number, and they can also report via that. There is an email address also given directly to contact the health authority. And they have also, I think, in the last 2-3 years back, they've come out with an app. अभी तो we have so many Facebook, Insta, तो एक app download करने से your storage space is not affected. But there is this app to report side effects, and they have these tabs already mentioned. You just have to punch in and press submit, and it directly gets reported to the health authority. So these are the different channels for reporting. You can opt for anything, and it's not that only my doctor can report. You, as a patient or a family member of the patient, can report as well. The next part is what is to be reported. So there's a very short and sweet acronym. It's called PREM. Okay, PREM. So P stands for patient, R stands for reporter, E for the event, and M for medicine. तो पेशेंट के अंदर people are very a little bit hesitant to give out personal information, जैसे कि नाम and address. So you need not give that. You can give the patient's initials, जैसे Nicole Pereira, so NP. the patient's age, the patient's gender can also be given, and that falls under the patient's information. Lab reports, etc., can also be shared, but that is, it depends on how the patient feels like and what information they would like to give out. Under the reporter tab, reporter is someone who is reporting the event. So if the family member is reporting, the family member becomes the reporter. So their contact information is required, because if you're reporting to a pharma company, usually there is a follow-up information request. So they ask you what else, to strengthen the case. These are just the basic four criteria which is required. But in case they want a little further information, they request the reporter's details. If it is a doctor who is reporting, so then the hospital where the doctor is from or some things like that can be requested. E is the event. So whatever side effect you have experienced taking the medicine, that needs to be described. And M is finally the medicine which has caused that side effect. So this is just four simple things which need to be reported when you're, when you experience a side effect. Yeah, that's it.
I think that was
I think
really
this
very.
the new
Go
yeah.
ahead, Sharda.
Yeah, the information was very informative and informative, and the new app which you have said that people can report their events, adverse events, that is very handy. Sitting at home and you can just report it because people are hesitant to go to the doctor because of that lag in the Indian population. They don't go to the doctor and report it. So bringing this app to the help of the people is really a very good idea, but is this coming to the notice of the people, like this app to use this app by the people?
Yeah, it is for the people. Usually on the PVPI website, it is mentioned over there specifically that there's a link which takes you to the app directly. The PVPI website also sends out alerts and notifications for HCPs, that is like your doctors, and for the patients. But this is, I think, the session should be enough for the person to go check out the PVPI website and gain a little more insight about pharmacovigilance and what is there ready for them to use by the health authorities.
Yes, yes.
Great.
So I think this is the platform people are getting, उनको लोगों को पता चल रहा है, otherwise but through the doctors अभी तक तो मैंने तो नहीं देखा है that they can report these adverse events through this app, which is very handy. So I think ये ऐसे awareness creation is very important for the diabetics to report their adverse events. Yeah.
True, true, Sharda. So I'll go ahead with the next question. Uh, so we know that a lot of people, especially in the Asian context, we supplement allopathic medications with herbal medications or homeopathy medications or Ayurvedic medications. So when we are taking like these two lines of medications together, are there any side effects of that? Or in general, what would be your perspective on like taking different lines of medications like allopathic plus something else? Is it helpful? Is it not helpful? Or it can cause any side effects?
Um, I think I'll take the first half, which is related to safety, and I think Dr. Jignesh can address the medical aspect. So I think, as you rightly said, when we think of green color, we think of herbal, and then we attribute that to nature, safety kind of thing. So we always think that even OTCs for that matter, over the counter drugs, we think because it is freely available, it must be much more safer and than the normal medications which we have. But I think when you talk about herbal supplements, as long as it is vetted out by a doctor and it is prescribed by them to complement rather than conflict your normal routine of medications, I think till then it is okay. Whereas I think Dr. Jignesh can take up the medical aspect of the repercussions. But I think from the safety point, it can also be, it's not 100% safe. Every drug can interact differently with an individual and can have side effects.
So it's best to check with your doctor on what medication and herbal supplements or other line of medicines that you're taking. I think it's best to check if they are working together to help you or they will have some other side effects.
Yes, and yeah, also follow up is also important there because see now if we talk of research and current understanding on this topic, this is a topic of immense interest and relevance with very less amount of research, properly conducted research, which can give us proper answers. There are studies done in few, less than 100 patients, fewer patients, wherein different combinations of herbal supplements along with anti-diabetes medicines are evaluated, but those studies are not enough to provide some conclusive evidence. What we know is that certain agents like Karela, okay, Karela is quite popular for controlling blood glucose levels,
Yeah.
and it can have a strong glucose lowering effect when used in combination with metformin. Even with less than half of the dose of metformin, you can get a hypoglycemic adverse reaction.
Mhm.
This has been reported in one of the studies. So the interaction can be quite strong when we are talking of agents like Karela. Different uh, different herbs that are used in our day-to-day dietary practices like methi, haldi, dalchini. These are commonly used in the herbal supplements for diabetes, and these all have lots of active biological ingredients. Um, as I mentioned, when we are talking of multiple biological ingredients in the herbal supplements, you need to actually know and you need a very good research to understand what is the extent of hypoglycemia or any other kind of interaction that these can have with the allopathic medicine for diabetes, which is not very clear at this stage. So, uh, following up when we are using these complementary interventions, following up regularly with our doctor for any adverse reaction is also equally important.
Okay. But I think that's a great reminder for every one of us here, because I know a lot of people in the community also take a lot of herbal, ayurvedic or homeopathic medications, maybe not just for diabetes, but for other comorbidities as well, like maybe some sort of an asthma problem or skin issues or cardiovascular issues. So they do take supplements to help along with medication for diabetes, but it's always important that you check with your doctor, let them know what medications you're taking, and maybe the doctor can help you better to understand what works, and if something is wrong, something can cause a bad side effect. I think it's very important for us to know that. uh, Shada, would you like to take the next question on the pregnancy part?
Yes, yes. Sorry for the connection errors.
No
Yeah.
problem.
So, doctor, during pregnancy, like most of the doctors, जो भी
Okay, I think there's some issue. I'll go ahead and ask the question. So, during pregnancy, we see a lot of doctors ask diabetic patients to move to insulin injections or metformin. So, if someone doesn't want to move to these lines of treatment like insulin or metformin throughout the pregnancy duration, what could be the repercussions for that?
Uh, okay, so so it's a difficult one. See, one thing we must understand is that pregnancy is it's a
Hmm.
stressful condition for the body. Okay, and we discussed about the sick day rule, the
Right.
conditions of stress. It's a
Yes.
stress that the person has to bear for many months. Okay, and this is a situation where insulin is something that you can depend on fully, much more than any other intervention. Now, stress is one aspect of it. The other aspect is द फीटस इटसेल्फ, जो बच्चा डेवलप हो रहा है उसका डेवलपमेंट में कुछ इंटरफेयर हो सकता है क्या विद द मेडिसिन. And that is one very important question for which whenever these medicines come to market, there is an immense research done in the non-clinical settings, animal
Hmm.
studies, और उसमें बहुत अच्छे से वो रिसर्च होता है कि whether the drug crosses the placenta and reaches the developing baby. If it reaches the baby, then does it cause any problems in the development? And even during lactation, after birth, does it does it come out in the breast milk, and can it affect the development of the neonate? And these are important aspects. And uh, even to an extent, for metformin also crosses the placenta. Metformin reaches the developing baby in the womb, and in some situations it can also cause slowing of the growth of the baby. But it is seen that once the baby is out in the neonatal period, then there is a rapid growth and the baby grows into an overweight child. Okay, so these things are important because we are talking of medicines which have a strong effect on metabolism of the body. During the early developmental stages of life, these drugs can have an influence, and that's why insulin and lifestyle are the interventions that we need to rely upon during pregnancy. Um, if insulin cannot be taken under any circumstance, then metformin is the next drug that we fall back on. But in some situations, particularly if the patient has hypertension or preeclampsia during pregnancy, as it is known, or if there is intrauterine growth retardation, baby, small baby का growth ठीक से नहीं हो रहा है baby में. In such situations, metformin must be avoided, and insulin is the only intervention that should be relied upon. Uh, for other medicines, again, there are some medicines like DPP-4 inhibitors, which can be considered as a last resort by the physicians, but these are not very thoroughly researched and recommended as routine care in diabetes, and this should be considered only based on the good expert endocrinologist's advice.
Okay. And I know a lot of people in the community as well, like through the pregnancy, they get on injections like insulin injections, and after the delivery, they are weaned off and then they move on to their regular metformin dosage. So I think if
Yes,
anyone in the audience is planning for pregnancy or they are going through their pregnancy, it's important to know that don't be scared if your doctor asks you to move on to insulin injections. That could just be for the duration of the pregnancy so that you have a healthy and safe pregnancy. And definitely after the delivery you can sit with your doctor and check on if you want to get off of insulin or and move back to your old medication. But it's always important to know that don't be scared of insulin injections. I think that is one thing that I always like to talk about, is like, because we see a lot of people being afraid of syringes and like insulin hai kaise lenge kya karenge. But yeah.
absolutely, sir.
Yeah.
So Shada, would you take the next question?
Yeah, we move on to the next question. Doctor, we say all the doctors सभी लोग बोलते हैं कि regular monitoring is very important to check your sugar levels कि वो ऊपर नीचे हो गए कभी कभी it gets unnoticed also कि it goes to 400 500 or 300 sometimes or maybe hypoglycemia भी होता है. So in that cases for long term सब कोई कोई अगर चेक ही नहीं कर रहे हैं तो इन दैट केसेस व्हाट आर द रिपरकशंस हो रहे हैं अंदर बॉडी में कौन से इवेंट्स हो रहे हैं सीरियस इवेंट्स क्या क्या हो सकते हैं अगर हमारे ऑडियंस को ये सब पता होगा तो मे बी दे विल बी मोर केयरफुल एंड दे डू द रेगुलर मॉनिटरिंग ऑफ their blood glucose. So just can you tell about it?
And I think
Okay.
for people with type 2 diabetics, we see a lot of resistance in checking blood sugars, you know. Like type
Yeah.
1, we have to check it multiple times a day. We have no
Yes,
other
yes,
option.
yes.
But for type 2, and we have a lot of audience living with type 2. So I want to like reaffirm that, like just like what are the bad like side effects or like worst conditions that the patient can have if they are not monitoring their sugars.
And what happens in type 2 is we like once in a month or twice in a month we are
Yeah.
checking, but in that 1 month there
Yeah.
are chances that many a times people go very
So,
hyperglycemic or hypoglycemic also. So what is that duration? Suppose if for 1 week if the patient is for hyperglycemic, what are the conditions the patient may suffer internally, because it's a silent killer, we'd never notice the symptoms immediately. So what is happening inside? Can we
yeah,
tell
yeah,
the
definitely.
audience?
Yes. So actually, it's a long answer question, but yeah, the crux of this is important. Glycemic variability, as we call it, and or more specifically, there is a concept of time in range. Okay, so while we measure blood glucose levels through HbA1c test or fasting or post meal or random blood sugars, but within the 24 hours of the day, for 70% of the time, the blood glucose levels need to remain within 70 to 180 mg per dl. That is the range of normal blood glucose levels. And often this time in range is not optimum. The patients may have HbA1c in near control or controlled range, but the time in range would be disrupted. And this can independently increase the risk of microvascular complications. This has been proven. Microvascular complications like kidney disease or retinopathy. This risk can be independently contributed by time the patients not being within the range in 24 hours, even if the blood glucose levels overall are controlled. So that's one important aspect. Fluctuations in blood glucose levels can happen due to many conditions, and one aspect, when Snehal, you were talking about type 1 diabetes, I was just thinking of this. See, when type 2 diabetes, when it begins in the early stages, it is about high degree of insulin resistance and the body not being able to overcome that insulin resistance, and the beta cells of pancreas start dying. So that's the early stage of type 2 diabetes. But in the advanced stage of type 2 diabetes, a lot of beta cells of the pancreas are already dead. That's the time when we are also talking that the patients require exogenous insulin. When the beta cells are already dead, and the body is not able to secrete insulin, it's the condition is similar to type 1. So type 2 diabetes evolves over a period of time with significant loss of beta cells, and that's where all these control mechanisms start going haywire. Okay, because that's an important biological aspect. So, so yes, maintaining time in range is important. It can be monitored either through 24-hour continuous glucose monitoring (CGM), and there are devices available which can be used for this. But it is um, self monitoring of blood glucose also can give some kind of indication that the things may not be within the normal range, and if measured within multiple times of the day, that can be uh, that can be deciphered. Um, Also, yeah, regular testing. I think HbA1c levels need to be evaluated once every 3 to 4 months, and that needs to be done in a disciplined way because see, when blood glucose levels are left uncontrolled, they will they will cause damage to the blood vessels. Okay, and that continues over a long period of time, and that damage is then irreversible. It reaches a stage where it cannot be reversed, and then the patient will have events like heart attack or develop complications like heart failure or advanced kidney disease requiring dialysis and all that. So a good, as we say, a stitching time would save nine. A good control of blood glucose levels, I think it will ensure that a lot of things are taken care of in the long.
So, doctor, one more thing, like what upper level, if a patient is going for hyperglycemia, what upper level is considered is okay? Like this is the suppose if it is 200 after the that is postprandial. From 200 to 220 or 230, is it still high or can be workable in that case?
Uh, yeah, so yeah, if 200 is normal, then of course 220 is high. But
Yeah.
the recommended treatment target, as we were discussing, the thing that needs to be targeted beyond HbA1c is the time in range. That is the recommended evidence-based treatment target within the guidelines. And the normal range is considered to be 70 to 180 mg per dl. At
Okay.
least 70% of the time within 24 hours, it should be within 70 to 180 mg per dl.
All right.
25% of the time it can be more than 180, and maximum 5% of the time it should be less than 70. These are the maximum permissible limits. If any of these are deranged, then there is a correction required.
Okay.
That's a target that is recommended for as when you are initiating any therapy for the patients.
Yes, yes. I think
Okay.
that was
So
a good
every
reminder. I think the time in
yeah, please
range
share.
aspect, time in
Hmm.
range aspect is very important, and a lot of people are now talking about that. because previously just HbA1c was the factor that we used to like adhere to, and we would be like बस HbA1c सही है तो कुछ tension नहीं है. But now we're more talking more on time in range, and I think it's very important, like doctor said, to like have 70% of your time in range. Your blood sugars need to be in range. And I think we are there's so much to talk about in this topic. I think we'll need another session, but owing to our time constraints as well, I'll move on to our next and the last question for today. What are the effects of alcohol on anti-diabetic medications? So like we just hear this from a lot of people, from experiences, like people who are on insulin or living with type 1 type 2 diabetes, and who have experience with alcohol. So like how do we manage with that, like because with type 1 I know I can check my sugars and understand, oh, my sugars are going high or low, and I can take the corrective action. But for people with type 2 who maybe are on metformin and they are not regularly checking, so how do they take care of, like if they are planning to have alcohol, and accordingly, like food consumption through alcohol and medication through alcohol?
Uh, yeah. Again, now in the context of diabetes, the answer would be a little different, and in the larger perspective, it may be a little different. Now, see, when we are talking of alcohol, the most relevant and most commonly understood adverse effect is hypoglycemia, and particularly when used in combination with insulin or sulfonylureas, which increase the body's insulin secretion. The risk of hypoglycemia is naturally higher, which can be further increased with alcohol. Uh, so it has been observed that when alcohol is consumed in moderation, it is okay. The risk of hypoglycemia is not significantly higher, and moderation means one drink for women and two drink for men per day. That is the standard guidance for moderate consumption of alcohol. Excessive consumption, of course, hypoglycemia can happen. It can also cause a condition called as lactic acidosis when used along with metformin. So metformin, we talked of GI adverse effects, but lactic acidosis is a very rare but serious adverse reaction that can happen with metformin, and particularly and that's why we talked about the sick day rule when during severe stressful conditions, these drugs need to be avoided. Um, if there is binge drinking when the patient is on metformin, lactic acidosis can be precipitated, and this requires hospitalization. It's a serious adverse reaction. Similarly, with drugs known as SGLT2 inhibitors, sodium glucose co-transporter 2 inhibitors, which is another important class of antidiabetic drugs, diabetic ketoacidosis can be precipitated when there is an instance of binge drinking. So, yeah, for hypoglycemia and these severe serious adverse reactions, it is the diabetes guidelines recommend consumption, if at all, in moderation, not excessive alcohol. But if we look at the larger perspective beyond diabetes, then the safest level of alcohol consumption is 0 ml per day. Okay, that's been derived in a meta-analysis published in the Lancet journal, globally renowned Lancet journal, a couple of years back. Because alcohol itself can cause lots of problems like gastritis, esophageal cancer. And these problems are mitigated at the threshold of 0 ml per day. Uh, so, in terms of larger health perspective, 0 ml per day is what the evidence suggests. But if at all it needs to be consumed, it should be in moderation.
Okay.
Thank you so much, doctor. I think the alcohol question is always like a taboo topic for discussion for the patients and the doctors, like little very scared. But even if you have a discussion or you don't have a discussion, and if you are at a party, people do tend to have alcohol, right? So, but thank you for letting us know. And like the side effect that we can look forward to is like this hypoglycemia. So always like have enough food when you're drinking, because most of the times food is like an lost cause. You just keep on continuously having alcohol, and then you miss out on eating food. So always supplement it with good amount of proteins, so that your sugars are stable and you don't land up in a hypoglycemia. I think this was a very, very interesting session, and Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Jignesh and Nicole. And I'm pretty sure the audience has had a lot to learn. Do you both have anything to say to the community?
Uh, yeah, Nicole, after.
Yeah, I think I hope that this session has shed a little light on what pharmacovigilance is and the importance of reporting adverse events, be it non-serious as well. uh, I think we could, Dr. Jignesh and we could both go on and on about how it is important for patient safety. But I am very grateful to Blue Circle for having us here, and to the audience to listen to us for 1 hour and give us your time for today. That's
And thank you to the Blue Circle team. I think this is a wonderful job that you are doing. See, this level of education, it often fails to reach the patients, and that's where
Yeah.
there are lots of gaps between knowledge and actual practice and the outcomes of the condition. So thank you so much, and we hope that this has been of some value to our listeners. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Nicole, and thank you so much, Dr. Jignesh, for joining us on a Sunday evening, taking time out and helping us and our community learn a lot about something, an unknown topic, basically. And I'm pretty sure the audience learned a lot. And I'm sure I echo Sharda's sentiments as well when I say this. A token of
Yes.
from the entire community to both of you. And thank you to our lovely audience for joining us today. With this video will be saved on our YouTube and our Facebook group as well, so you can refer to this again whenever you require. And we all will see you again on next Sunday with another interesting topic. And do follow us on all social media handles. We are there on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Reddit, you name it, and we are there. You just have to search for Blue Circle Diabetes Foundation. So show us some love and support and follow us there. And I think this would be sign off from me and Sharda and our guests
Yes.
here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to the speakers. It was a very great session. I really enjoyed it, although there were many correction errors. But
That's
still, yes, I really enjoyed because this is a platform. I think people are getting aware, getting to know many things about diabetes, and this is very much the need of the hour. So thank you to the speakers, and also thank you to the Blue Circle Voices for giving me this opportunity to have me here and host this event. Thank you so much, Neil.
thanks, Sharda. Thanks. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.